Blanch was born on February 17, 1933, in Concord, North Carolina. Her father, Parker Davis Kaiser, worked in a mill and was also a Baptist minister. Reports suggest he treated her harshly and even forced her into inappropriate situations to settle his gambling debts. He passed away in 1966 from what was believed to be a heart issue. Her mother, Flonnie Blanch Kaiser, was known to be kind and supportive. On May 29, 1952, Blanch married James Napoleon Taylor. They had 2 children together. She worked at a local Kroger store and eventually became the head cashier. By 1962, while still married, Blanch began a relationship with Raymond Reed, a divorced store manager. Then, the pattern began. Blanch's first husband, James Taylor, passed away on October 2, 1973. It was believed to be from a heart attack. Her father died in 1966, and her mother-in-law, Isla Taylor, passed in 1970, both under similar medical conditions. Then, in 1986, Raymond Reed became very ill over time and later passed away. At first, doctors thought he had Guillain-Barré syndrome. But when an autopsy was performed, it showed that he had a large amount of arsenic in his body. In 1989, Blanch married Reverend Dwight Moore. Not long after eating a meal she had prepared, he became seriously ill. He was hospitalized and also diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, but more tests showed the truth. He had been poisoned with arsenic too. Unlike the others, he survived. At that point, investigators took a closer look. Investigators believe Blanch's actions may have been motivated by money. She received life insurance money after her first husband and boyfriend passed away. Around the same time, she had also filed a lawsuit against Kroger for inappropriate behavior from a manager. This legal battle may have added financial pressure. Blanch was taken into custody on July 18, 1989. She was officially charged in connection with Raymond Reed's passing. Her trial began in October 1990. Prosecutors shared details of her hospital visits to Reed, including how she brought him food. They also talked about the other people close to her who had passed away under similar conditions. The defense claimed the evidence was not direct and suggested the Reed may have died naturally. The jury spent 3 days reviewing everything. On November 14, 1990, they found Blanch guilty. She received capital punishment. At the age of 92, she is currently the oldest woman on death row in the United States. The next woman claimed to be pregnant, but when a mother vanished, the truth unraveled fast. Linda Anita Carty was born on October 5, 1958, in St. Kitts. At the time, St. Kitts was a British colony, which made her a British citizen. She later moved to the United States in 1982 and eventually became a U.S. citizen as well. Carty worked as a primary school teacher. She also studied pharmacology at the University of Houston. In 1992, she was convicted of car theft and pretending to be an FBI agent. Instead of prison, she was sentenced to 10 years of probation. One condition: she had to work with law enforcement as an informant in controlled substance-related cases. That ended when she was later arrested on separate substance charges. Then came May 16, 2001. In Houston, Texas, 25-year-old Joanna Rodriguez and her newborn son, Ray, just 4 days old, were taken from their apartment. Not long after, Joanna's lifeless body was found. Her body had been stuffed into the trunk of a rental car. The car had been rented by Carty. The baby was found alive in a second car parked nearby. Police quickly turned their attention to Carty. They believed she planned everything, and that she wanted to take the baby to raise as her own. According to prosecutors, she thought it might help her save a failing relationship with her boyfriend. But they also said she didn't act alone. 3 men, Chris Robinson, Gerald Anderson, and Carlos Williams, were allegedly involved in the plan. Neighbors told police something strange. Carty had been claiming she was pregnant, though she didn't look like it. She had been seen buying baby items. Some were found in her car. When officers reached out to her, she told them where to find the vehicles. Inside, they found Joanna's body and the baby. Carty's fingerprints were found inside both cars. Police also found surgical scissors, hospital scrubs, and other medical supplies. For investigators, the case was clear. On February 19, 2002, Carty was found guilty of intentionally taking Joanna's life. 2 days later, she was sentenced to capital punishment by the state of Texas. The case against her was built mostly on the statements given by the 3 men she was accused of working with. These men received lighter sentences in exchange for helping the prosecution. Carty's lawyer, Jerry Garino, was heavily criticized for how he handled her case. He did not call key witnesses to testify and failed to notify the British consulate after her arrest, which is something required under international law. Her legal team argued that the men involved framed her because she had once helped law enforcement as an informant. Since her conviction, Carty has continued to say that she is innocent. She believes the others blamed her to protect themselves. Her legal appeals have been rejected in several courts. The U.S. Supreme Court chose not to review her case in both 2010 and again in 2018. Public opinion would be divided for years to come. Many people have raised concerns about how her case was handled. They point to the fact that the prosecution relied on the word of people who had their own legal issues. They also question the actions of her lawyer, who they say did not do enough to defend her properly. The British government has spoken out as well. They were especially concerned that their officials were not informed after her arrest, which they say should have happened. As of 2025, Linda Carty is 67 years old, and she is still on row in Texas at the Mountain View unit in Gatesville. She continues to maintain her innocence and is still trying to find new legal options to challenge her conviction. The next story began with a knock, a $30 bill, and a brutal ending. Virginia Susan Caudill was born on September 10, 1962. The Caudill name goes back to a Stephen Caudill in colonial Virginia around 1732. That shows her ancestors lived in the area for many generations. But we don't know much about her own parents or upbringing. In March 1998, Caudill was living with her partner, Steve White, in Lexington, Kentucky. Their relationship fell apart because Caudill was using substances. She left his home and later ran into an old acquaintance, Jonathan Goforth, at a nearby crack house. They decided to work together to get money. On March 15, 1998, just after 3 a.m., Caudill and Goforth went to the home of 73-year-old Lynetta White, Steve's mother. They said they needed cash for a hotel room. White gave them about $30, which they used to buy snow. When they ran out again, they went back to White's house asking for more money. When White opened the door, Caudill and Goforth struck her with a blunt object until she lost her life. They then wrapped her body in a carpet, put it in the trunk of her car, and drove to a remote spot where they set the car on fire to hide what had happened. After that incident, Caudill and Goforth left Kentucky. They traveled through Florida and Mississippi. Months later, authorities arrested Caudill in New Orleans, Louisiana. During questioning, she said she had been there, but that Goforth had done most of the aggressive acts. Goforth, when arrested, first blamed someone else, but then said Caudill had started it all. In February 2000, both of them faced trial in Fayette County, Kentucky. The state showed science-based proof, like traces of White's red stains on Caudill's clothes and inside Goforth's vehicle. Jailhouse informants said Caudill had admitted taking part in the fatal event, though their stories didn't always match. Each of them blamed the other. Caudill said Goforth had acted first and forced her to help move the body. Goforth said Caudill had struck White with a hammer and then planned how to hide the evidence. On February 17, 2000, the jury found Caudill and Goforth guilty of taking White's life, taking property by force, breaking in, setting the car on fire, and hiding evidence. They each received capital punishment, plus extra years for the other counts. Caudill's sentence was upheld through several appeals. In 2003, the Kentucky Supreme Court confirmed the ruling. She has asked for federal review, arguing legal mistakes, but those requests have not succeeded. As of May 2025, Caudill is 62 years old. She remains housed at the Kentucky Correctional Institute for Women in Pewee Valley, still waiting on the outcome of her final appeals. Now meet an 80-year-old woman held for conspiring with a younger lover to do the unthinkable. Donna Marie Roberts was born on May 22, 1944, in Youngstown, Ohio. Her parents were Michael Roberts and Pauline Tarago. She went to Austintown Fitch High School. After that, she spent 2 years at Youngstown State University. In 1966, she married William Raymond. They had a son, Michael Raymond, in 1969, and divorced in 1971. In 1972, she married Burton Gelfand. That marriage ended in 1980. While living in Miami, Florida, she converted to Judaism. She then worked as a plastic surgeon's assistant for more than 20 years. In 1980, she met Robert Fingerhut. They married in 1983. At first, they lived in Richmond, Virginia, for a year. In 1993, they moved back to Youngstown, Ohio. In 1994, she bought a house on Fond du Lac Avenue in Warren. Together, they ran the Avis car rental at the Youngstown-Warren Regional Airport. Later, they managed both the Youngstown and Warren Greyhound bus stations. She also operated a small restaurant called Just the Ticket inside the Youngstown bus terminal. On December 11, 2001, Fingerhut was found with gunshot wounds in the kitchen of their home in Howland Township, Ohio. Police learned that Roberts had been seeing Nathaniel E. Jackson, a man 28 years younger whom she met while working at a restaurant. Jackson was in prison at the time for another offense. While he was locked up, they exchanged many letters and phone calls. Their messages were explicit and laid out plans for the future. They aimed to collect over $500,000 in life insurance proceeds, with Roberts as the beneficiary. She bought a mask and gloves for Jackson and let him into their home. Jackson was released on December 9, 2001. 2 days later, he entered the house and used a gun on Fingerhut. At 12:01 a.m. on December 12, 2001, Roberts called 911 and reported that her former husband had been shot. At first, she suggested one of his male friends might be responsible. Investigators soon uncovered her affair with Jackson. They found 147 letters in the trunk of Fingerhut's car and had recordings of 19 phone calls between Roberts and Jackson. These showed they planned the act together. Roberts was arrested at home on December 21, 2001. Jackson surrendered that same day at a Youngstown address. In 2003, a jury found her guilty on 2 counts of severe homicide with capital specifications, plus theft and burglary with firearm details. The jury recommended the maximum sentence, and the judge imposed it. In 2006, Ohio's highest court threw out that sentence because the trial judge had improperly worked with the prosecutor on the sentencing opinion. Roberts was resentenced in 2007. In 2013, her sentence was set aside again because the court had not allowed her to speak on her own behalf at sentencing. She was given the same sentence once more in 2014. Her appeals since then have all been denied, and she remains the only woman on Ohio's list for capital punishment. As of May 23, 2025, Donna Roberts is 80 years old. She is held at the Ohio Reformatory for Women in Marysville, Ohio. The carrying out of her sentence is on hold while she completes all state-level post-conviction proceedings and appeals. Next, we'll look at a Florida case involving a boy known as Baby Lollipops. But the truth behind that nickname is far darker than anyone expected. Ana Maria Cardona was born in Cuba. She moved to Miami, Florida as a child. Little is known about her early years. She said someone forced her to perform intimate acts at age 11. Her parents did not believe her. As an adult, Cardona began a relationship with Fidel Figueroa. He was a wealthy dealer in illegal substances. They had a son, Lazaro, on September 18, 1987. The family lived in comfort for a short time. 2 days after Lazaro was born, Fidel passed away under unclear circumstances. Cardona inherited a large sum of money. She spent it all within 10 months. After the money ran out, she and her children moved from one cheap hotel to another. She relied on her new partner, Olivia Gonzalez, for support. Cardona worked a variety of odd jobs. She also took things without paying. In November 1988, Cardona won back custody of Lazaro and his sister. Over the next year and a half, Lazaro endured severe harm and neglect. He was tied to a bed for long periods. He was left in a bathtub, with hot or cold water running. He spent up to 2 months locked in a closet. He went without enough food and became very weak. He suffered many bone fractures and other injuries. Cardona called him a bad birth and blamed him for losing her wealth. On November 2, 1990, workers from Florida Power and Light found a frail boy's body in some bushes outside a Miami Beach home. The t-shirt he wore had lollipops printed on it. Authorities began calling him Baby Lollipops. An examination showed many injuries: skull fractures, broken bones and teeth, burns from a cigarette on his cheek, and sores from being kept in one position too long. He was also extremely dehydrated and undernourished. The official cause of his passing was a blow to the head with a baseball bat. Olivia Gonzalez later told investigators she saw Cardona strike Lazaro with a bat. In 1992, Cardona went on trial. The jury found that she had caused Lazaro's passing and seriously harmed him over time, sentencing her to the harshest penalty allowed. But in 2002, that conviction was overturned due to mistakes made by the prosecution. She was retried in 2010, and once again, the jury found her responsible and gave her the same severe sentence. A third trial followed in 2017. This time, she was again found guilty, but instead of the original punishment, she was sentenced to life in prison. She is 61 years old as of May 2025. Was the next woman a victim of control or a willing partner in a series of unthinkable acts? Cynthia Lynn Kaufman was born on January 19, 1962, in St. Louis, Missouri. She grew up in a Catholic home. Her early years were unstable. Her parents split up when she was young. Her mother raised Cynthia and her brothers alone. At one point, her mother tried to place them in foster care. When Cynthia turned 18, she got married and soon became a mother. That marriage ended in divorce. She moved to Arizona for a fresh start. There, she met James Gregory Marlowe shortly after he left prison. They began using illegal substances together. Their partnership took a dark turn in 1986. From October to mid-November 1986, they went on a disturbing series of events across California and Arizona. They approached several women. Each time, they kept them from leaving. They took personal belongings. They also forced unwanted contact. None of the women made it out alive. Their bodies were later found in remote areas, far from the public. The pattern ended on November 14, 1986, when officers took the pair into custody. Later, Cynthia said she had been under Marlowe's influence. She claimed he made all the decisions, and she followed out of fear. Her defense said she suffered from a condition called battered woman syndrome, which may have shaped how she acted during that time. They were tried together in San Bernardino County. In 1989, a jury found both of them guilty. The charges included first-degree unlawful homicide, holding people against their will, theft, breaking and entering, forced non-consensual physical act. Both received capital punishment. Cynthia was the first woman in the state to get this penalty since 1977. In 1992, Cynthia faced a second trial for the case involving Lynell Murray. She was once again found guilty. The jury added a life term to her sentence. Her claims of mistreatment and coercion did not change the verdict. She is 63 years old and remains confined at the Central California Women's Facility. Carrie Dalton was born January 24, 1960, in Van Nuys, California. Public records share only a little about her childhood and family. She had a prior burglary conviction, which factored into her later sentence. On June 26, 1988, in a trailer at Live Oak Springs Trailer Park in Boulevard, California, 23-year-old Irene Melanie May was fatally harmed. Prosecutors say Dalton, her boyfriend Mark Lee Tompkins, and Cheryl Ann Baker used a cast-iron frying pan, a sharp object, and a syringe filled with battery acid. They believed May had taken Dalton's jewelry and other belongings. No body and no weapon were ever recovered. That lack of physical proof became central at trial. It raised questions about whether there was enough evidence. Dalton was arrested May 14, 1992, almost 4 years after the incident. The case rested on witness statements. Many witnesses were known to use substances and had troubled pasts. One key witness, Joanne Fedor, the trailer's owner, was said to be under the influence of crystal at the time and was described as mentally unstable. Dalton's trial began in 1995. The state presented only circumstantial evidence in those statements. The judge noted there was no body and told the jury they needed to decide if May had really been fatally harmed. The jury found Dalton responsible for a first-degree offense involving taking a life, with special findings for extreme cruelty and causing prolonged suffering. On May 23, 1995, she received capital punishment. She appealed her case multiple times. In 2019, the California Supreme Court reviewed it and removed the claims that she had conspired or waited in hiding to commit the crime. Those parts of her sentence were dropped. But the finding of extreme cruelty remained, along with her original penalty. As of May 2025, Dalton is 65 years old. She remains at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla. She is still under the maximum penalty. Her story has been featured on TV shows about women facing that level of punishment. When the next young victim didn't wake up, all eyes turned to her mother. But what if they got it wrong? Melissa Elizabeth Lucio was born on July 18, 1968, in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. She comes from a Mexican-American background. Her early life was extremely difficult. She faced serious mistreatment as a child, and later lived in a home where she was treated badly by her partner. These experiences left long-lasting emotional scars. Melissa became a mom when she was still very young. Over time, she had 14 children. Life was not easy. She dealt with poverty and developed an addiction. These struggles were made worse by the trauma she had lived through. Still, people who knew her said she loved her children and tried her best to care for them. On February 17, 2007, something tragic happened. Emergency responders came to Melissa's home in Harlingen, Texas. Her 2-year-old daughter, Mariah Alvarez, was found unresponsive. Medical workers tried to help her, but she did not survive. A medical exam later found signs of head injuries and bruises. Because of this, authorities believed that someone may have caused her harm. Melissa was brought in for questioning. The interview lasted several hours. During that time, she was put under heavy pressure. In the end, she said things that investigators saw as a confession. However, Melissa kept saying that her daughter's injuries came from falling down the stairs 2 days earlier. In 2008, Melissa was put on trial. She was found guilty of taking the child's life. The prosecution mostly used her statements from the long interrogation and the medical examiner's opinion that the injuries looked like signs of harm, not an accident. Melissa's legal team said the confession wasn't real, that it was forced out of her. They also said the injuries could have come from the fall, just like Melissa explained. She was sentenced to capital punishment under Texas law. She became the first Hispanic woman in the state to receive this sentence. Her case soon gained national attention. Many people and advocacy groups stepped forward, saying they believed she was innocent. Over the years, new information came to light. Experts raised questions about her guilt. In 2022, just days before the sentence was set to be carried out, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals put a hold on it. They ordered the case to be reviewed. In 2024, Judge Arturo Nelson looked over the case again. He said that Melissa was actually not responsible for what happened. He explained that prosecutors had held back important evidence that could have helped her during the trial. He also said her so-called confession was the result of unfair and forceful questioning. The judge recommended that her conviction and sentence be canceled. As of May 2025, Melissa is 56 years old. She is still waiting on a final decision from the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. Her case is still widely talked about. Many people see it as part of the bigger conversation around serious punishment and people being wrongly found guilty. Now meet Tina Brown, whose attempt to mend a friendship ended in a tragedy. Tina LaSonia Brown was born on July 19, 1970. She lived in a mobile home park in Escambia County, Florida, with her daughter, Brittany Angelique Miller, and their neighbor, Heather Triney Lee. The three of them were close with 19-year-old Adriana Zimmerman, who also lived there. Over time, tensions grew, especially after Zimmerman was found to have been involved romantically with Miller's boyfriend. That led to an incident in which Zimmerman used a stun gun on Miller in self-defense. On March 24, 2010, Brown invited Zimmerman to her home, saying she wanted to repair their fractured friendship. Once Zimmerman arrived, she was targeted by Brown, Miller, and Lee. They struck her with a crowbar and repeatedly shocked her with a stun gun. After beating her, they forced Zimmerman into a vehicle and drove to a nearby wooded area. There, they poured gasoline on her and set her on fire. Despite her severe burns, Zimmerman managed to reach a nearby house and call 911. She was taken to a hospital in Mobile, Alabama, with burns over 60% of her body. Before she passed on April 9, 2010, she provided the police with the names of those who targeted her. Heather Triney Lee entered a plea deal and pleaded guilty to second-degree homicide. In return for her testimony against Brown and Miller, she was sentenced to 25 years in prison. At 16 years old, Brittany Angel Leek Miller pleaded guilty to first-degree homicide. Because of her age at the time, she received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Tina LaSonia Brown went to trial in June 2012. The jury found her guilty of first-degree premeditated unaliving. During the penalty phase, they recommended capital punishment. On September 28, 2012, Judge Gary Burgosh imposed capital punishment. At sentencing, the court noted that Brown had no major prior criminal record, but found 3 aggravating factors. It was planned and deliberate. It was especially cruel. And it occurred when they took the victim against their will. The court also looked at mitigating factors, such as Brown's difficult childhood and history of mistreatment, but concluded those did not outweigh the aggravating factors. As of 2025, Tina Brown is 54 years old and remains on row at the Lowell Correctional Institution in Ocala, Florida. She is the only woman on row in the state.